Hello everyone, my name is Karthik. I am a PhD student at the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, and this is joint work with my advisor, Professor Rajesh Sundaresan. So here is a quick outline of the talk, and without any further ado, let's move into the motivation for the problem. So here is a set of 20 images, out of which one of the images is different. Let's call this the odd image. The goal is to identify the location of the odd image as quickly and accurately as possible without guessing. So as many of you may have already identified, the odd image is at this location here. So let's repeat this experiment with a different set of images. In this case, the odd image happens to be at this location. So in both of the experiments, the goal was to identify the location of the odd image as quickly and accurately as possible. Now I say accurately also because it may so happen that we end up choosing the location of the odd image erroneously, and we would like to keep the chances of that happening as small as possible. So in general, the time to identify the location of the odd image is a function of the prescribed accuracy, or equivalently the error tolerance level, and the closeness between the odd and the non-odd images. Now by closeness, I mean to say to what extent the odd image stands out to our eyes when compared to that of all the non-odd images. Perhaps some of you took a little longer to identify the odd image in this case because the odd image doesn't seem to stand out as much from the rest of the non-odd images as in this case. So one can ask the question of whether the time to identify the location of the odd image can be described in terms of the quantities in A and B here in a precise mathematical form, and the answer to that question is yes. So this is what Vaidyan et al. Did. They showed that given an error tolerance epsilon, the amount of time to identify the odd image grows as logarithm of 1 over epsilon times 1 over d star, where d star captures is a constant that captures the closeness between the odd and the non-odd images. Further and importantly, Vaidyan et al. Showed that their growth rate is in fact tight in the asymptotic limit as epsilon goes to 0. So one can ask the question of whether the analysis carried out by Vaidyan et al. Can be extended from static images like the ones that were shown before to that of dynamic images or movies. At this juncture, I would like to take you to a MATLAB demonstration and return back to the slides. So here is a quick MATLAB demonstration. What you see on the screen are 8 patches of drifting dots movies. The dots in each of these movies is executing Brownian motion with a fixed drift. Now the drift in one of these movies is different from the common drift of all the other movies, and the goal is to identify the movie with the odd drift as quickly and accurately as possible. It's very clear from this experiment that the movie highlighted in blue here is in fact the odd movie. Let's repeat the same experiment with a different set of drifts for the patches or the movies. So in this case, it's a little difficult for us to identify where the odd movie is, but it turns out that the one highlighted in blue here is in fact the odd movie. Let's now return back to the slides. So as we saw, the goal was to identify the odd movie as quickly and accurately as possible, and one can similarly ask the question of how the time taken to identify the odd movie grows as a function of error tolerance and the closeness between the odd and the non-odd movies. Now it turns out that a systematic analysis of this question along the lines of that carried out by Vaidyan et al. Requires an understanding of the so-called odd restless Markov problem, which forms the main subject of our paper and which will also be the main subject of this presentation. Before I get into the odd restless Markov problem, I would like to bring to light the notion of trembling hand that is commonly observed in visual search experiments like the ones we saw before. So typically in visual search experiments, a subject or a decision maker is shown a number of images or movies at once, upon which the decision maker starts to scan these images or movies by focusing his attention to one image or one movie location at a time. Neuroscientists have observed that in practice, while the decision maker intends to focus his attention at a certain location at any given time, the actual focus location at that time differs from the intended focus location with a small probability. And the way we capture this in our system is by saying that suppose BT is the subject's intended focus location and AT is the actual focus location at time t, then AT and BT are equal with a high probability, let's say of 1 minus eta, and AT is uniformly randomly chosen with the probability eta, where eta is some fixed positive constant that depends upon the decision maker. It may be a function of the decision maker's way of choosing locations, and it may be different for different decision makers. We refer to the above phenomenon as the decision maker having a trembling hand, where eta is the corresponding trembling hand parameter. Throughout our paper, eta is going to remain fixed and known, and it will appear in all the results of our paper. So here is the odd restless Markov problem. Now before we get into that, let's see some connections between the visual search with movies demo that we saw earlier and the topic of multi-arm bandits. Each movie is analogous to an arm. A movie frame is analogous to an observation from an arm. Now, because the dots in each movie executed Brownian motion with a fixed drift, The positions of dots in any two successive frames of a movie are related to one another, and this can be captured by saying that successive observations from an arm constitute a Markov process. The drift in one of the movies was different from the drift of all the other movies, and this can be captured by saying that the TPM of one of the Markov processes is different from the common TPM of all the other Markov processes. Now, each movie continued to play whether or not the movie was observed, and this in the setting of multi-arm bandits is known as arms being restless. As opposed to this, if each movie is paused when not observed, then that corresponds to the setting of rested arms. Finally, identifying the odd arm is analogous to identifying the odd movie is like identifying the odd arm in the multi-arm bandit. So with these connections in place, the main problem we address in this paper is that of odd arm identification with restless arms. So the problem setup is as follows. We will consider a multi-arm bandit with k greater than or equal to 3 arms. We will assume that the arms are independent of each other. Now the condition k bigger than or equal to 3 will ensure that the notion of odd arm makes sense. Each arm for us will be a time homogeneous and ergodic Markov process on a common finite state space. The TPM of the odd arm will be denoted as P1, and the TPM of each of the non-odd arms will be denoted as P2, where P2 and P1 are different from each other. A decision maker, we assume, knows P1 and P2, and his goal is to identify the odd arm as quickly and accurately as possible. Let's note here that knowledge of P1 and P2 will not make the problem any less non-trivial. It will capture all the essential features of the problem, and it will in fact help us in bringing out the key challenges that are encountered in the analysis of this restless arms problem. And we feel that the additional technical challenges brought in by P1 and P2 being unknown may obscure these key challenges. And therefore, for this paper, we assume that P1 and P2 are known, and we postpone to a further study the case when P1 and P2 are not known. The decision maker is allowed to observe the state of only one of the arms at any given time, and the unobserved arms continue to evolve, making the arms restless. And also, let us bear in mind that the decision maker has a trembling hand. So with this, we now highlight our contributions. Given an error tolerance epsilon, and P1 and P2, transition matrices P1 and P2, we show that the average time to identify the odd movie grows as logarithm of 1 over epsilon times 1 over r star of P1, P2, where r star is a closeness. It's a constant that captures the closeness between the odd movie and the non-odd movies. We provide an explicit characterization for r star, and this happens to be the first such characterization of this constant for the setting of restless arms. We in fact show that the above growth rate is tight in the asymptotic limit as epsilon goes to 0. In our analysis, we identify a family of MDPs, and we stitch together the solutions to these MDPs to arrive at our asymptotic lower and upper bounds. The presence of the trembling hand translates to a very important ergodicity property in the context of MDPs, and it is this that we leverage in our analysis of the lower and the upper bounds. Now, typically when we think of MDPs, we are reminded of the notion of reward maximization. In contrast to a theme of maximizing rewards, our work is based on the theme of optimal stopping, which simply means that we are interested in identifying the location of the odd arm or the odd movie as quickly as possible, and we would like to stop further sampling. In order to better appreciate the usefulness of the framework of MDPs in our problem, we recall here that our setting is one in which each arm yields Markov observations and the arms continue to evolve whether or not they are observed. This may mean that if we do not observe an arm for a sufficiently long duration of time, we lose sight of the state evolutions on that arm. Now, the framework of MDPs tells us that it is important to track, to keep a record of the extent to which we lose sight of the state evolutions on all the arms put together, which we call the global perspective, as opposed to focusing on only one arm at any given time, which is the local perspective offered by the prior works. It turns out that by making a lift from the local perspective to the global perspective, the problem becomes amenable to analysis. Now, this brings me to highlight a key distinguishing feature of the setting of restless arms, which is that of arm delays and last observed states. Now, because each arm continues to evolve whether or not it is observed, it is important for the decision maker to keep track of the time elapsed since each arm was last selected, which we call the arm's delay, and the last observed state of each arm. Notice that the notion of arm delays is superfluous in the case when either each arm yields IID observations or when each arm yields Markov observations and the arms are rested. Now, here is a quick demonstration of how the arm delays and the last observed states are updated over time. What you see at the top are arms and sequence of observations from each arm. Time for us will be discrete, and it will start from t equal to 0 onwards. An observation at any time t will be denoted as x subscript t, and the superscript will indicate the location of the arm. Now, without loss of generality, we assume that the decision maker is going to observe each of the arms once in the first k time instance, which is he observes arm 1 at time 0, arm 2 at time 1, and so on up to arm k at time k minus 1. Once these initial set of observations are obtained, the decision maker is going to stand at the starting of time t equal to k and ask himself, how far back in time was arm 1 observed? Now this at time t equal to k will be denoted, at time t will be denoted as d1 of t for arm t, d2 of t for arm 2, and so on. This represents the delay of arm 1 at time t, and clearly this is equal to k because arm 1 was sampled k time instants back in relation to time t equal to k. What was the last observed state of arm 1 at time t? This we denote as I1 of t, and this was x01 corresponding to t equal to k, which simply is the observation obtained from arm 1 at time 0. Likewise, we update the delays in the last observed states of all the other arms. Notice that dk of t equal to 1, which simply means that arm k was observed at the immediately previous time instant, which is time t equal to k minus 1. Now, let's suppose that the decision maker ends up selecting arm 2 at time t equal to k. Then, at time t equal to k plus 1, the delays in the last observed states are as shown here. Notice that d2 of t has changed to 1 and all the other delays are incremented by 1. So, if we go on updating the delays in the last observed states in this manner, we see that exactly one of the delays is equal to 1 at any given time instant. And the information that we get about the delays and the last observed states are what arms were actually pulled and not the ones intended to be pulled by the decision maker. So what arms were actually pulled, the AT, and what observation was obtained from the arm AT at each time. And therefore, this pair here collectively summarizes the amount of information that we are losing about each arm, in a sense that it helps us keep track of the extent to which we are losing sight of state evolutions on each of the arms. So this is what I refer to as the global perspective. Notice that giving the entire information about all the intended arm pulls, actual arm pulls, and the observations obtained up to a certain time is equivalently given by giving the information about the intended arm pulls and the delays and the last observed states. So there's a nice interplay of the various variables going on here. For a moment, if we consider DTIT as the state of the entire multi-arm bandit as viewed by the decision maker based on all the information he has at his disposal up to a certain time t, we notice that given the entire history up to time t and also the current state of the system at time t, the decision maker will be able to make a decision on which arm to select at time t. This is what is denoted as BT. This is the intended arm. However, the decision maker has a trembling hand and the actual arm that gets selected is AT, and the decision maker gets to observe the state of arm AT. Based on this, the decision maker is able to update the current state of the system to DT plus 1, IT plus 1. So therefore, we are in a setting of a control Markov process where BTs correspond to the controls and the DTITs correspond to the states across time. Notice that in order to update DTIT at any time t, it suffices to have the knowledge of BT. The rest of the history can be thrown away. And therefore, we have a Markov decision problem in which the particulars are as shown on this slide. Now, of course, at each time t, the decision maker can make two possible choices of actions. Either he can choose to pick the next arm to observe based on the entire history and also based on the current state of the system, or he can choose to stop and declare which arm is the odd arm. Now, if BT is selected in such a way that it does not depend on the entire history, but depends only on the current state of the system, and it is chosen according to a fixed conditional probability distribution on the arms conditioned on the current state of the system, then we refer to such a policy as an SRS policy. So here, lambda is stationary across time and doesn't depend on time. Let's denote an SRS policy associated with lambda by pi lambda, and let pi SRS be the set of all SRS policies. A very important property we have in our paper regarding SRS policies is that under any SRS policy, this process DTIT here, which we said was a controlled Markov process earlier, is now in fact a Markov process. And further, this Markov process happens to be ergodic thanks to the trembling hand parameter of the decision maker being strictly positive. And therefore, under any pi lambda, this process is going to have a unique stationary distribution, which we call mu lambda. So once we have ergodicity and once we have mu lambda, we can go ahead and define an ergodic state action occupancy measure, which simply tells us the long-term probability of seeing the multi-arm bandit system in the state Di and the decision maker choosing arm A subsequently. Notice the presence of the trembling hand in the way the decision maker gets to choose arm A based on the current state of the system Di. So with these things in place, we are now ready to see the lower bound. Of all the notations on this slide, I'm only going to bring your attention to pi epsilon, which given an error tolerance level epsilon is the set of all policies for the decision maker whose probability of error at the time of declaring the odd arm is at most epsilon. And given a policy pi, we write tau pi to denote the amount of time required to identify the odd arm or the odd movie under policy pi, also called the stopping time of policy pi. With this, the lower bound expression is as shown on the top of this slide, and this is the explicit expression for R star. R star has the interpretation that it's the amount of effort required by the decision maker to identify the true odd arm by guarding himself against identifying the nearest incorrect alternative odd arm. So some remarks about R star. First, R star doesn't depend on where exactly the odd arm is located. Number two, the LHS of the lower bound contains all policies possibly those that are not necessarily SRS policies. However, the right-hand side of the lower bound, which contains R star, is a supremum only over SRS policies, and this is a consequence of an important result in the theory of Markov decision processes, which says that given any policy pi, there is an equivalent SRS policy for which the value of the objective function depicted here, the double summation, matches with that of pi. Finally, the computability of R star is an issue because it involves a supremum over all SRS policies. In fact, this is a supremum over all the lambdas. If you can recall the notation of lambda, which is a conditional distribution on the arms, conditioned on delays in last observed states, it's a supremum over all such conditional distributions. Now, notice that these conditional distributions are much more complicated objects to deal with than their unconditional counterparts. This is because of the presence of arm delays, which can potentially be countably infinite valued. And therefore, in order to compute R star, one may need to resort to algorithms like Q-learning or a variant of that for restless arms that was proposed in a very recent work. Although we do not yet have a clear understanding of whether the supremum in the expression for R star can be attained by some SRS policy, we do know that because it is a supremum, it can be approached arbitrarily closely, and we shall make use of this result in our upper bound analysis. In other words, what we are saying is given any delta positive, there definitely exists some conditional distribution lambda that possibly depends on delta that gets us as close as 1 plus delta over R star. By stitching together the solutions for the various deltas, we may then get to the upper bound of 1 plus 1 by R star. So let's see how this is done in steps. Now let's fix a delta positive, and let's also fix another parameter L, which I'm shortly going to tell how to choose. And for these two parameters, let's describe a policy called pi star of L delta. What our policy is going to do is it's going to select arm 1 at time 0, arm 2 at time 1, and so on up to arm t at time k minus 1. And for all the other times, at each of the other times, it is going to maintain a guess of the odd arm at each of the times based on the intuition that the odd arm is the one for which the nearest alternative is kept as far away as possible. So it's based on a simple log likelihood ratio based test statistic. Now, for the guess of our guess of the odd arm, we are going to evaluate the test statistic at time t, and if this has exceeded a large enough threshold, we will stop and declare our guess as the true odd arm, or else we are going to sample further, and the way we are going to sample is according to the distribution lambda corresponding to delta and our guess of the odd arm. Now notice immediately that theta hat of t could potentially depend on the entire history of intended arm pulls, actual arm pulls, and the observations. So it may depend on the entire history and not just on the information at time t. And therefore, our policy pi star is not necessarily an SRS policy. In spite of this, we are able to show that our policy stops in finite time with probability 1. And if L is chosen such that it is equal to the inverse of the error tolerance, then our policy will satisfy the desired error probability, which is epsilon. And finally, as expected, for the policy pi star of L delta for any fixed delta, we can get as close as 1 plus delta over R star. And if we stitch together the solutions for the various deltas, we can get as close as 1 by R star, which happens to be the lower bound also. And therefore, the main result we have in our paper is that 1 by R star is the correct constant that captures the limiting growth rate of the amount of time required to identify the odd arm in the setting of restless arms. And R star has the interpretation that it's the amount of effort required by the decision maker to identify the odd arm by guarding himself against identifying the nearest incorrect alternative odd arm. Let me also mention here that closer the odd and the non-odd movies, or the odd and the non-odd arms are, smaller is the value of R star, and therefore longer is the time taken to identify the odd arm. In conclusion, it is the ergodicity of the Markov process DTIT that played a key role in our analysis of the upper and the lower bounds, and this was made possible thanks to the trembling hand of the decision maker, which in turn means that the trembling hand parameter eta was strictly positive. When eta is 0, there may not necessarily be such an ergodicity. Now, in fact, it turns out that when eta is greater than 0, this ergodicity is obtained for free. But when eta is equal to 0, such an ergodicity property may not necessarily hold. And we show in our supplementary manuscript that there may be a gap between the resulting upper and the lower bounds for the case when eta equal to 0. Also, in a setting of restless arms, we typically encounter conditional distributions on the arms conditioned on delays in last observed states, which are much more complicated objects to deal with than their unconditional counterparts which appear in the settings of the prior works. As future work, we would like to study the case when the transition matrices P1 and P2 are not known and have to be learned along the way. So here are a few references and a few acknowledgements. Thank you.